All right, today we're tackling one of the biggest questions in all of history. How in the world did the Roman Empire actually fall? I mean, for centuries, this was the most powerful state on the planet, an empire that really seemed like it would last forever. But it didn't.
So that gets you thinking, right? How does a superpower, a civilization that basically defines an entire era, just collapse? The story of Rome isn't just some dusty old history lesson. It's a timeless look at power, fragility, and of course, change.
Well, the thing is, the answer isn't simple at all. Rome didn't fall because of one battle or one single bad emperor. Nope. It fell because its entire system, its economy, its military, its politics, grew so massive and so complex that it just crumbled under its own weight. So let's break down exactly how that happened.
Okay, first up, let's just talk about sheer scale. For Rome, its greatest strength, its incredible size, eventually turned into its greatest weakness. The price of keeping an empire that big running was absolutely staggering.
I mean, just try to wrap your head around the logistics here. At its peak, the empire literally wrapped around the entire Mediterranean. It went from the chilly frontiers of Britain all the way down to the deserts of North Africa and deep into the Middle East. Governing a territory this huge and diverse was a monumental task.
And, defending all that, even harder. Rome needed this massive professional army. We're talking about something like 400,000 soldiers who were constantly stationed along thousands and thousands of miles of frontiers. This wasn't just a simple border wall. It was a constant, massive drain on the empire's bank account.
And that huge cost? Well, that leads us right into our next big problem, the internal decay. While all those legions were out guarding the borders, the real rot was starting to set in back home, right in the empire's economic and political heart.
You see, there was this hidden crisis brewing inside the economy. To pay for its massive army and all its government workers, Rome started to debase its own currency. What does that mean? Well, emperors just started reducing the amount of precious metal, like silver, in their coins. This led to runaway inflation, and pretty soon, people completely lost faith in the money itself. And at the very same time, the political system was basically imploding. The 3rd century was just pure, unadulterated chaos. Rome had dozens of emperors in just a few decades. Seriously, being emperor became one of the most dangerous jobs on earth, with tons of them getting assassinated by their own soldiers. This constant state of civil war completely paralyzed the government. So, in a desperate attempt to get a handle on all this chaos, the Emperor Diocletian made a radical call. He split the empire in two. But here's the thing, this split was anything but equal. The East was way wealthier, it had more big cities, and it was just easier to defend. The West, on the other hand, was poorer, more rural, and had these long, exposed frontiers that were incredibly vulnerable.
And that vulnerability? Oh, it was about to be tested in a huge way. With the empire rotting from the inside, immense pressure was building up on the outside. And this wasn't just about simple invasions. We're talking about entire peoples on the move. You had these large groups, including Germanic tribes like the Goths, the Vandals, and the Franks, who all started migrating into Roman territory. They weren't always hostile invaders, not at first anyway. A lot of them were actually refugees, fleeing conflicts in their own lands, or just looking for a better place to settle down.
Now, as Rome struggled to find enough of its own citizens to join the army, it started hiring these same newcomers to defend its borders. So the Roman army started to fill up with non-Roman mercenaries. But here's the problem. Their loyalty was often to their commander and to their paycheck, not to some far-off abstract idea of Rome.
And this whole fragile system just shattered in the year 378. After really mistreating a group of Goths they had allowed to settle, the Romans faced a massive rebellion. At the Battle of Adrianople, a Roman emperor was actually killed and his entire army was annihilated. It was a total military catastrophe, the kind of defeat Rome hadn't seen in centuries.
Adrianople did way more than just destroy an army. It destroyed an idea. The psychological shock across the empire was immense. The message was crystal clear. The Roman legions could be beaten. Their whole aura of invincibility was just gone.
So you see how all these pieces are coming together, right? This toxic mix of factors led directly to the final collapse, with a weak economy, a totally unstable government, a compromised military, and this immense pressure from the outside. The Western Roman Empire was now right on the brink.
And from here, the final decay was shockingly fast. As the chaos spread, trade routes just collapsed. Without trade, cities began to shrink.
And as the economy cratered, the tax money that the state needed to even exist just disappeared. The Western Empire was basically starving itself to death.
And what came next were the final fatal blows. In 410, the Visigoths did the unthinkable. They actually sacked the city of Rome. In 455, the Vandals did it again. Finally, in 476, the very last emperor in the West, a young boy ironically named Romulus Augustulus, was quietly removed from power.
And that date, 476 CE, that's the year historians point to as the end. There was no epic final battle for the empire, it just ended. The central government in the West had completely dissolved. It just faded away. But, and this is so important to remember, this wasn't the end of all of Rome, not by a long shot. The wealthier, more stable eastern half, which we later called the Byzantine Empire, would actually thrive for another 1,000 years, carrying on Roman traditions, laws, and culture. So, look, if you take just one thing away from all this, let it be this. The fall of Rome was a systems collapse. It wasn't a sudden death, it was a long, slow illness. It wasn't caused by one single thing, but a whole chain reaction of failures.
Think about it. The military overstretch led to economic strain. That strain then fueled political instability. And all of that internal weakness was like an open invitation for external pressure. The real story, the one that matters, is how all of these problems fed off each other, creating this massive domino effect until the entire structure just gave way.
And all of this, of course, leaves us with a pretty big question for our own time, doesn't it? The story of Rome is this powerful reminder that no system, no matter how powerful or permanent it seems, is immune to those slow, creeping forces of internal decay and external pressure. It teaches us that even the greatest powers are, in the end, remarkably fragile.